Hi, my name's Stephanie Parker. Thank you so much for letting me record my presentation for you. I hope you like it. So I'm hopefully this is going to work. I couldn't figure out the sound on the TV, so the sound's going to be coming from my computer. So there might be some delay in the sound and visual, but I'm going to send you the presentation through email again anyway, just in case you want to watch the videos with the same time frame as sound and visual, because I'm sure it will bother you. But I'm going to try. I decided that I was going to do my presentation on Gilda. My other fellow presenters of my week told me they were going to talk about like the exact definition of film noir, because there was going to be 4 of us. So I decided that I was going to concentrate solely on Gilda, the classic film noir, and then also talk about the role of the sexuality roles and roles of women during the time period, and if Gilda is a clear representation of that or not. So here we go. All right, it's working. So first, because not everybody in the class had seen the film, I decided I'd give a brief summary of the film, so my comparisons and definitions made sense to them. So Gilda is a classic film noir film made in 1946, starring Rita Hayworth and Glenn Ford, who were classic actors during the time and did a lot of film noir. The basic premise is Johnny Farewell, who's Glenn Ford's character, is an American gambler who moves to Buenos Aires and then is saved by an illegal casino owner, Balin Mudson. Johnny eventually becomes the manager of the casino, but then after Mudson returns from a long trip, he returns with a new wife, which happens to be Johnny's past lover, Gilda, who is Rita Hayworth. There's a struggle between loyalty to his boss and contempt towards Gilda, and there's an epic love-hate relationship as always. Throughout the film, Johnny guards Mudson from discovering that Gilda has been having multiple rendezvous with strangers, but Gilda only does these things and suggests them because she wants Johnny to be jealous of her. Eventually, Johnny discovers that Mudson controls an international cartel, and when the police close in on the case, and also he sees Gilda and Johnny kissing, he fakes his own death. So Gilda and Johnny... Sorry. Johnny and Gilda get married, but Gilda marries him for love, and Johnny only marries her to get back at her for having so many rendezvous with other people, and for both of them to be punished by doing wrong, by betraying Mudson. In the end, the two profess their love for each other, and then Mudson returns to kill them both, but one of the servants kills him with his own weapon. So that's the basic premise, so now we know what we're talking about. So the basic film noir characteristics are present in Gilda. Obviously, it's filmed in black and white, not just because of the time period, but even film noir films made afterwards are still very dark, maybe not exactly black and white, but a lot of shadows. Also, the obvious reason of good and bad. Black and white symbolism is throughout the film. There's a very dark tone and theme. Most film noir is very melancholy, morally corrupted, alienated, guilty, paranoid, and they're all in Gilda. The whole film has a sense of unhappiness and despair. Like the way Gilda acts around other men and eventually with Johnny is morally corrupt. Gilda feels alienated in both of her marriages. With Johnny, it's because he literally does not talk to her because he's punishing her, and with Mudson because she just didn't love him and was being overly protected by him. Johnny feels guilty for causing Mudson's death, and Gilda's paranoid that she'll never be happy unless that she has a man and money, which is the common struggle for women in the time. And all the characters in the films are usually driven by their past or human weaknesses. The male main character is usually disillusioned and hard-hearted. Not always a detective, even though that's what we think. Some of the occupations are private eyes, cops, war veterans, lone wolf, gangster, criminal, or murderer. And of course, Johnny is a gangster. And also technically a criminal. There's a lot of voiceover in this film with Johnny. It gives us an insight of what he's thinking, and especially when he sees Gilda and how he feels about her. And there's a lot of plot twists. My favorite one was when she went to Montevideo and was with this guy, and he convinces her to go back to Buenos Aires to get a divorce from Johnny, when we realize that he was working for Johnny the whole time. So just big shocks like that. And the screenwriting was excellent in this film. That was one of my favorite parts. And it's full of subtext, a lot of sexual subtext, and that just kept you really interested in Gilda and her character. Music is also used a lot in this film. Of course, for this time period, a lot of orchestral music is used to emphasize like action, and I'm going to show you a clip of that. And then there's of course musical numbers, which also makes this kind of a musical, but I'll talk about that later. So here's a clip.
Put your hands up. Up. Out. Get going. Cane like that can come in handy. It is a most faithful and obedient friend. It is silent when I wish it to be silent. It talks when I wish to talk. That's your idea of a friend? That is my idea of a friend.
So I like this scene because in the beginning there's sound, and it's very like dramatic, and he like hits him, and then it gets silent, which I also think is very useful. It adds another something to it, especially with the diegetic sound of the water, and when he throws the weapon into the water, you hear the splash. So they definitely thought about it. And the last thing is the femme fatale, which is the common thing in these movies. The main definition is a woman who uses her sexuality to lure men into their demise and are unloving, beautiful, and manipulative. Although Gilda does use her sexuality to manipulate people, and she is talked about as a femme fatale, I feel like she is a little different than the rest. I feel like because she uses this manipulation of hers not to be evil and not to be mean, but she truly cares for Johnny, and she's doing this for his love, and also because she feels that she has no individuality or definition as who she is as a person, and this is what she uses to give herself a characteristic. So the theme of sexuality is prevalent in this movie, as in just film noir in general. Film noir in this time period usually depicted women either as femme fatales, which were evil and manipulative, or very innocent women who needed help, and which is very different from the actual time period, which is World War II. Women were working, women were strong, had jobs. So that they were still depicted in this way was problematic for the time. Gilda's actions in the movie do oppose the proper etiquette for women of the time period, obviously. She was very manipulative, sexual, doesn't hide anything from anyone, but she doesn't do it to be cruel. But you notice that she is one of the only women in the movie that talks. There's a ton of women in the movie, but they might have one or two lines, and usually it's to other women. So I found that very interesting. This also shows that that women are not appreciated, and she made herself known by her sexuality. And then, for example, there's a scene where the first scene she comes out and she's kind of half dressed, and her husband asks her, "Are you decent?" And she comes out and she's just like flaunting, and she sees Johnny, and then you realize that they know each other, and she covers herself up a little, and it's like, yeah, I'm decent. So there's always a play around what she actually believes and what she actually does. So you can tell that she's doing it for Johnny only. So marriage as a prison. I skipped a point. Oh, male-dominated society. So this whole movie does play around with, men being dominant. In that first clip that we saw, you see that Mudson threatens the outlaw with his cane, which has a blade in it. And so when he goes to talk about it, he says, "Oh, they list this. Is that a friend of yours?" He goes, "Yeah, they always listen." And he's pretty much describing women during the time and what they should be. Always listens, never disobeys. So that he gets killed with the cane in the end kind of compares Gilda and the cane together, that they're both part of his demise. Especially the scene where they toast to Johnny and Mudson and the cane all toast together, like the three of us. And then they later, when Gilda and the other two of them are in the restaurant and they toast the three of them, it's kind of making a connection between the two and how they're both strong and can make a difference, but can also be hurtful. Marriage as a prison is a popular theme in the film. Gilda's described as a canary in a cage in the beginning, and she's always singing, so that kind of makes sense. Mudson always warns her, "Do not step out of line," which kind of confines her in a space. But then when she finally gets married, she feels like she's in a prison because she cannot go out with him. She cannot go out with other guys. He tracks her down, so she's always stuck. So no matter if you're married, you will always feel like you're captured by something. Also, women as objects has forever been a thing. The big comparison with Gilda is laundry. That's like their code for her to get out, to go out with all these guys. So he's like, "I'm gonna go pick up the laundry," and she definitely picks up on that as soon as he calls her that, and she plays with him on that throughout the film. One of the things she says is, "I'm the laundry. I'm simply obeying instructions." She understands that she is property and she is owned by someone, but that's just the time period, and she doesn't agree with it. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the song that defines Gilda. It's called "Put the Blame on Mame." The song is about natural disasters that happen, and like popular ones at the time, and how like it should have happened, but then you find out a woman was the reason why it happened. She sings it 3 times. Well, you hear it 3 times. The first one is when she is introduced, it's playing on the radio, and she's humming. The second time is she's playing it on a guitar by herself in like the dining room. And then the third one is when it's her infamous striptease number. So this song pretty much sums up the whole film and sexuality and how women are just trouble and there's nothing you can do about it. So I was going to show a clip of this after this show.
At Ithaca College, you'll join a community of scholars, leaders, and history makers.
Gilda, are you decent?
Me? Sure, I'm decent. When they had the earthquake in San Francisco back in 1906, they said that old Mother Nature was up to her old tricks. That's the story that went around, but here's the real lowdown. Put the blame on Maine, boy. Put the blame on Maine. One night she started to shim and shake. That brought on a Frisco quake. So you can put the blame on Maine, boy. Put the blame on Maine. They once had a shooting up in the Klondike when they got Dan McGrew. Folks were putting the blame on the lady known as Lou. That's the story that went around, but here's the real lowdown. Put the blame on Maine, boy. Put the blame on Maine. Maine did a dance called the Hitchy Cruise. That's the thing that slew McGrew. Put the blame on Maine, boys. Put the blame on Maine.
Yeah, so finally I have a question. So my questions are, do you think that Gilda, from what you know, because not everyone has seen this movie, is a typical film noir? And do you think Gilda is a typical femme fatale, based on your knowledge of that? And so that's my presentation. So thank you so much again for letting me record it, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks, I'll see you on Tuesday.